So just a quick story about me. My name is Terry Griffin once again, and I actually did not start off in education. I started off as a civil engineer. I work with the Army Corps of Engineers, and if you guys, when we think about engineering, we think about bridges, we think about waterways, or electronics. I worked in an office in cubicles, so everything I saw every day was gray, and that wasn't good enough for me. So I actually left my job with the Army Corps of Engineers, which was what everyone would call a good government job. And I went into teaching. For most people, that sounds like a crazy idea. And you're laughing because that's what a lot of the reaction I got was, are you crazy? Do you know how much of a salary cut you took? But through my process of going from engineering to teaching, I realized that it's more of an investment in myself. Over the past 3 years, and I've only been teaching for 5 years, I've been able to climb the ladder at my school and go from a classroom teacher to a school administrator. And it's simply based on good work ethic, being able to understand and identify where my gifts are and what assets I have that I can give to my school community, and then also understanding how to fill in a gap and knowing my own value. So those are 3 key takeaways that I just have from my life in general, and working with all girls at my school, so it's always drama, it's always something going on, somebody's always in my office. I was dean of students, so I was the one you were sent to when you were not having a great day, and I would always ask my girls, you know, what brought you here today? Why are you in my office? What happened this morning? Instead of automatically assuming, you know, you did something wrong, it's all on you, it's your fault. I'm going to ask you what's going on with you. And I would always hear, well, this morning my mother said, or me and my mom last night, or oh my God, my house, my family, I just can't. But it always went back to mom. So I started to think, well, what can we do about this? How can I help these girls? How can I help these mothers that I always end up talking on the phone to? Build a relationship where they can start to have a conversation to get to know each other so that they can have better days and better lives. So that is actually where Bond, Building Our Nation's Daughters, comes from. And I grew up in a single mother household, so I know how important it is to have a good relationship with your mom, especially when you are a young woman, because that's you in the future, honestly. Even though we don't like to say it, that's you in the future. So you need to know who you are and who you might be, and some of the things that you might need to learn from your mom, especially being a young woman. And in the future, I do plan to expand to have a component that actually mentors single moms and their sons, because that's a relationship that's really interesting to watch. It's a dynamic that a lot of people have not tapped into, so I'm trying to think about programming around that. But that's just my little spiel, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic.
Yeah, kind of how I alluded to during the general session. Again, my name is Jay Morrison. They call me Jay Mr. Real Estate. And I grew up in New Jersey, from Somerville, New Jersey, in a single-parent household. My biological father left when I was 3 months old. I had a stepfather that came in a few years later, but who would end up going to prison for several years for some robbery charges and other things. I grew up in a household where my entire family sold drugs or lived a street lifestyle. My grandfather sold drugs, my mom sold drugs, my stepfather sold drugs, my father sold drugs, my uncle sold drugs, everybody sold drugs. And so with that being around me so much, I had aspirations to play basketball, to be a ball player. And I remember in 6th grade, we had to write down 3 things we wanted to be when we grew up. And I said I wanted to be a basketball player, a lawyer, or a con man. And I always had a mentality of getting over, of hustling. And so at 15, I dropped out of high school, started hustling full-time in the streets. We'll go back a year later to and finish out high school and graduate. But in that period, I already committed myself that I was going to get money in the streets. Like, I already knew that's what I was going to do. I made my first 1,000 at 16 and my first 10,000 at 17, and then I had 100,000 by the time I was 18. And would graduate high school making money, thinking I was the man, but 4 months after I graduated high school, landed in jail in New York for a quarter key of coke, a loaded .38 handgun, and was facing 3 years of life in prison. I'll plead guilty to a 1 to 3, serve a year in New York jail on Rikers Island, upstate New York, but only learned how to sell drugs better while I was in jail. It didn't reform me, it just gave me more tricks of the trade. So I came down here to Maryland, where I had a route from New Jersey to Maryland, to here in Baltimore, where Mr. Rick was one of my guys in my route, and one of my best friends, and I'm also out to Lincoln, Nebraska, How I got out to Nebraska was because that's where my actual biological father lived. He lived in Nebraska. And so when I was 17, he visited New Jersey. My first week I ever spent with my dad. And one of my town customers called me, one of the fiends, and said, your dad's in town, he wants something. So I served my pop some Coke. He came back to me and said, son, what you gave me in New Jersey goes to double in Nebraska. So I took my first trip out to Nebraska. I spent the first week of my life with my biological dad selling drugs with him and to him and my stepmom. And so just to fast forward though, that was just my lifestyle from 15 to 25. It was just all streets, that's all I knew. That's all I cared about. It was straight trap or die. And while on a block in Newark, New Jersey, just looking at my situation, I had a dope block there. I had some blood dudes hustling for me. And I'm just watching them and they dreads swinging and red flags hanging and they wouldn't say no words with C's. So instead of saying circle, they say Burkle. I was just like, man, this is crazy that this is where I'm at. I always thought I was a pretty smart dude. I thought I had a lot of potential, but I'm like, how did I end up here on the roughest street in North New Jersey selling dope at 5 in the morning around a bunch of killers? And so at that time, with 3 felonies at that time. And so at that time, I just asked myself, where do you want to be? Where are you going to be when you're 30? And I was like, and I only could picture myself being dead or in jail. That was it. And so I tried to reimagine that same thought though. Like I think I have to switch it in my head. So all right, nah, I'm gonna be somewhere else. I'm gonna be doing it. I'm gonna be getting money. But I only could picture myself dead in jail at 30. And so that day, I threw away my trap phone. I quit hustling. I gave the rest of my coke away to my man, and I said I'm gonna try this real estate thing full time. I got introduced to real estate while I was on parole. And so I bought my first house at 25. Got another house at 26. I have 3 actually. About 26. 6 by 27. Was got my real estate license. Even with 3 felonies, I got a real estate license. I had a mortgage license, and I owned at that time probably about $1.5 million in real estate at that time. I made my first $1 million in real estate by 28, and just started rocking. And I brought the same hustle mentality I had from 15 to 25. I brought it to this industry, to real estate, where they cut off their phones at 5 o'clock. They work from 9 to 5. I'm like, man, I work all day. So I'm telling my customers, you call me whenever. So they called me at 7. I'm just waiting. Hey, this is Jay. How are you? That's what I'm used to. Used to my phone ringing all night. So when I brought that energy to the real estate game, I started killing it, and did really well. I'll just fast forward a bunch of stuff and started over the last 4 years. My first 4 years is all about me. I was just balling. That was it. Like I didn't care about y'all. I didn't care about the community. I didn't care about my family, and that's it. And his Range Rover and his diamond chain and all the stuff that I had. And then after God humbled me actually and took mostly everything from me, and I would end up bouncing back, but that's when I realized like, damn, like you got all this talent, this amazing story, and you're not thinking about nobody but yourself. So that's when I wrote my book, Hip Hop to Homeowners, where I break real estate down in like a hip hop language basically. And started speaking in schools. February 10th of 2012, my first time speaking in a school to 600 kids. And to y'all right now, or any of this group, I can explain to y'all what our credit score is like that fast, and y'all get it. Or anything in financial literacy. So I fell in love with that, and then caught some celebrity clients, Angela E from the Breakfast Club, a couple of Jets, Giants players. As I said earlier, I got a real estate fund where I invest in real estate with Deshaun Jackson from the Redskins. Got a couple other guys that I work with. I did a campaign with Young Jeezy in September. He donated $1 million to my school. I have an online academy. So I just really started rocking, and my goal was to bridge the gap between real estate and pop culture. And all this, again, with no college education, not saying I don't promote that. I think you guys should get all the education you can. But education doesn't always have to be college, but you need a skill, you need a trade, you need a craft. So for me, that was getting a real estate license and understanding this real estate business and how to invest in real estate. And so at any given time, my eyes closed, I could flip a house and make 30, 40, 50, 60,000. And so now I'm in Baltimore with my company, in the Harlem Park area, West Baltimore, reinvesting into the community and trying to build it up from a social standpoint and a real estate standpoint. And that's just my passion. So it's like my passion is people, it's us, it's building us. And that's why my community organization is called Young Minds Can. I believe young minds can do anything if we give them the right path and target and get focused. So, for me, it's just like I said, piggybacking Keon, it's like, yo, whatever y'all want to do, y'all really can get to it. But you gotta like shake off all the I want to curse, but I'm not. You gotta shake off all the cool stuff.